Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Artsbeat TV and Radio here on Westfield Community Programming Channel 15, 89.5 FM WSKB. I'm your host, Mark Auerbach. We have a great program on tap for you today. And without any ado, let's move on to meet our first guest, Daniel Elihu Kramer, who is the artistic director of the Chester Theater Company. He's a regular guest on this program. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we haven't had a chance to talk about theater lately. We talked last spring about the hopes for a summer season, which unfortunately didn't happen. And yet there's been some great activity that Chester has been able to put online and stream this over the last couple of months. And an announcement was made recently that Chester Theater is going to move forward with the 2021 season. So, Daniel, it's great to have you back.
Mark, thank you. It's a treat to be here. I guess you're right. I am a regular guest by now. It's always a joy to be here.
You are. I mean, I was thinking as I was driving into the studio this morning, we have chatted a lot over the last 3 years or so here on Artsbeat, on almost like at least 2 times a year.
I think that's right. I appreciate it.
So as I'm getting ready to drive into the studio, I get a press release from you all. You've got a kind of an exciting thing happening for the summer.
We do, yeah. We were very excited as we were developing this plan and as it came together, and it was a treat yesterday to finally be able to share what we're thinking for this summer. We are going to be producing a 3-show season under the heading Chester at Hancock, because we are going to be working in partnership with Hancock Shaker Village and performing outdoors under a tent on the grounds of the village. I couldn't be more excited about it.
I know they have a lot of space there. I've been there once or twice. It's kind of Hancock Shaker Village is really a must go see place if you've never been there. How large will the tent be, and how many people do you think you'll be able to accommodate?
Well, the tent is big. The tent is about 60 by 100 feet. And I think that the questions about how many people we're going to be able to accommodate may have as much to do with what the state guidelines are by the summer as anything else. We're hoping to seat, and again, a lot of this could shift, but we're hoping to seat maybe 90 people or so at each performance, something along those lines.
So it's not really that much bigger or smaller than what you're able to do in Chester. It's just a wide open space.
That's right. So we have a capacity in the Town Hall Theater of about 130. So, it's less, but it's a similar scale. Obviously, we're expecting to have a lot of special practices that we'll need this summer, right? My guess is that we will be in a position where audiences will still be masked. We'll be outdoors, obviously. We're making plans to seat parties with each other and apart from other parties so that you are both masked. You have multiple layers of protection, right? You're masked. You're outdoors, you're at a distance from other folks. But I think we're all so yearning to come back in some way together to see live arts and live theater in particular. So we're pretty excited to have a plan that we think we can really make work for this summer.
Now, last summer, Berkshire Theater Group and Barrington Stage, working in conjunction with Actors Equity and the health department and all that, were able to do some outdoor tented theater performances. Did you get to go to either of them?
I didn't, but other folks on our staff were able to. So that has certainly provided some both inspiration and we hope some sort of guidance for us as we move forward. I think that both of those theater companies, it was so impressive what they were able to make happen. And I think they really were kind of out in front, and we are absolutely learning from their success.
Yeah, I think it was a great first step, and then Berkshire Theater did over the holiday season. They did Truman Capote's Holiday Memories outdoors in winter at a barn behind their Unicorn Theater, which I actually attended, and I bundled up for it. I missed live theater so much.
Mm-hmm.
I was willing to sit in sub-zero temperatures, and I'm kind of a diva about things like that. I don't like to be cold, but it was great. So I would assume that having this tent theater opportunity at Hancock will open up a lot of doors for Chester Theater, and I also assume that people are just craving live theater.
Yeah, I think that's all true, Mark. There are a couple things going. One is I think there are some folks in the Berkshire area who have maybe heard of us but have not found the chance yet to make the drive out to Chester. Uh, my hope is that maybe this summer, with us a little more conveniently located or located in a place they already know, maybe some folks will get to know us and then follow us back to Chester the following summer, because we certainly expect to be back in our own theater at the Town Hall Theater in Chester for the summer of 22. But I do think it's an opportunity. We also, in all fairness, have audience for whom it's going to be a little less convenient, right? Folks who are coming out from the valley to us. And the only thing I can say is, as ever, at least it's a beautiful drive, and you arrive in a beautiful place. Hancock Shaker Village, as you said, is just a stunning place, a stunning location. It's beautiful in every season, and I think that we're really excited to partner with the folks at the Village to let our patrons learn more about them and let their patrons learn more about us.
I don't think the drive to Hancock Shaker Village will intimidate that many people in the valley, because people in the valley are used to going to Tanglewood or Barrington Stage or
Mm-hmm.
Berkshire Theater Group and all of that. And there was a story in the Berkshire Eagle the other day that the dormant, long closed Friendlies in Lee will be turned into a Starbucks. So there'll be caffeine to help guide them on the way to and from Hancock.
Well, see, that now we're all set.
Now we're all set. How will performing in a larger space change your performing scope? Because you're so used to putting shows on a stage in a very small stage and house.
Absolutely. We're still figuring that out. One of the things that I think is distinctive about seeing a play at Chester Theater Company is what an intimate experience it is. And we're now trying to figure out, how do you keep that sense of intimacy while at the same time, of course, doing all the appropriate social distancing that makes it safe for folks. I think a lot of it may have to do with what kinds of sound support do we need, so that you really aren't straining at all to hear stuff. We're still going to be we haven't announced a season yet, but I can certainly say we're going to be doing the kinds of more intimate shows that people expect from Chester Theater Company. And at the same time, making sure that we choose plays that we think can thrive in this circumstance, right? You can imagine certain kinds of plays are just likely to work better in this setting than others. We're going to have, for an outdoor matinee show, you probably don't want to do too many ghost stories. It's probably not going to feel very spooky in the middle of a summer afternoon under a tent, for instance.
That's right. And when everybody took their pause at the beginning of the pandemic, you said that some of the plays that you had previously announced for 2020 might move to 2021. Now that the scope of our world has changed so much over the course of the last year, are some of those choices off the? Are you rethinking, let's say, some of the things that you thought would be so appropriate last year because so much has changed?
I kind of wish that were true. We certainly won't necessarily do precisely what we were going to do the previous summer. For one thing, the previous summer was going to be a 4-show season, and we're holding ourselves to just a 3-show season this summer. But in many ways, a lot of the issues that arise in some of the plays we were looking at feel, if anything, only more pressing. I'll give one example. There was a play that we were planning to produce in 2020 called The Niceties, which really revolves around both the role of slavery in the history and the present of this country, and at the same time, the difficulty of real conversation about that topic. Certainly none of those questions feel less vivid or less vital today than they did before. But at the same time, we're certainly not just going to be taking 3/4 of the previous summer season and spreading it across this summer. We're trying to, as ever, be responsive to and engaged with the moments we're living in.
Now, I know a lot of your choices every year are plays that are by up and coming playwrights, new works, works that are not necessarily going to be headed towards Broadway and the more commercial types of venues. With the pandemic in place, have you been able to read or screen scripts in a different way than you might have if you were able to go see other people's shows?
Sure. I mean, obviously, the great loss is that I can't do what you just said, right? Which is that I can't learn about new plays by seeing them. But I've been reading so many scripts, both from playwrights we already know and from folks who we're sort of making connection with during this time. The last play I saw in person was a Lucas Knopf play called The Thin Place, which I saw in, I think, around the beginning of February in New York. And it's actually a wonderful play that I hope someday we'll do, though this won't be the year. But yeah, we've absolutely had to find a new set of ways to think about how are we going to get to see stuff and learn about playwrights. At the same time, we've always been a theater where we do a ton of reading, and that has continued and grown.
Yeah. I've one of the playwrights that you featured several years ago, Lauren Gunderson, is probably the most produced playwright around. And the New York Times just did a story that she
Mm-hmm.
wrote a play that was inspired by being quarantined with her spouse during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Lauren Gunderson's work shows up on the Chester stage a lot. And it dawned on me that there must be a lot of work being produced right now by playwrights that are describing their experiences of the pandemic that'll become available to you guys to produce in the next year or two. Have any come across your desk?
It's interesting. I mean, the Lauren Gunderson story is amazing. If folks haven't read that article in the Times, it's worth looking at because it's not just about being quarantined with her husband. It's about being quarantined with her husband, who is a scientist and a pandemic expert. So it's particularly relevant in the moment. We haven't seen that work yet, and I'll be curious as we move forward to see how we process that in theater. Do we process it through literal depictions of what people have been experiencing? Do we process it other ways? There's so many kind of different ways to think about it. One of the things that I've thought about is that there's a wonderful novella by Catherine Ann Porter called Pale Horse, Pale Rider, which is a story that takes place during the flu pandemic of 1918. And I wonder if we're also going to be looking at other periods and other events that we thought were so distant from us, that we thought described ways the world wouldn't be anymore, and realize that we are much more closely connected to those times and those experiences than we were aware of.
Yeah, and I wonder if we're all too close to the pandemic right now to really want to go to the theater and see something about it when we're all just craving to get outside and do something.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's so complicated, right? Because, one of the things we're missing are the pleasures of gathering together. And, we're going to have to keep navigating our way through how much are we ready to delve into this? What kind of distance does it take to ask real questions about it, et cetera? One of the things we're grappling with as we try to plan for this summer, Mark, is that it feels right now so impossible to even imagine what will the world look like in May, in June, in July, in August, right? And to what extent will it be shifting even across the period of time that we're trying to make our work this summer? So we don't even know how to look 6 months ahead right now, which I think may also mean it's going to be a while before we want to look back.
You're right. One of the things that you all were able to do during the pandemic was to stream a production, a Shakespeare adaptation that you were the adapter of, which featured some of the members of your company. How did the streaming work for you, and did it open or did it bring Chester Theater into the eyes of people who were not aware of what Chester was doing?
I think it did a bit. I'll be honest. I will say that I had a great experience doing it. Our audience loved it, and we didn't run off and do another one, right? So it was a little of each. But we felt we couldn't let the whole summer go by without making work. So we got together some of the folks who worked with us a bunch, right? Tara Franklin, our associate artistic director, her husband, James Barry, both such wonderful actors. Shelley Fort, who had been in our production of The Mountaintop in 2016. And then the wonderful actor Michael Potts, who's actually featured in the new film of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. We got those folks together, and we were able to do that work. And we absolutely, some folks found us who wouldn't have known us otherwise. So that's always a great thing. I think that while we were making the work, it was exciting to feel that we could be, in a way, together making that work. At the same time, I think that we found that we were really glad we'd done that, and that we then needed to turn our energies back toward some of the other online events that we do, and then figuring out how to be back in person this coming summer.
Yeah, and it's funny because at the end of the 2019 season, Chester was all of a sudden getting a lot of national recognition, and people were, hearing about it, reading about it in papers and all of that. And then the pandemic struck, and you guys weren't able to ride that momentum out to continue. But the streaming at least got Chester Theater out there in the course of people's viewpoints. And I have learned from other people have said to me, when they get to stream something, they might not be able to drive to Chester because it might be too far away, or they had other commitments and things, but it gave them an opportunity to see your work. And other theaters are saying it's giving a lot of people the chance to see their work from all parts of the country. Do you know who tuned in to see that streaming thing?
We know some of it. We don't know everybody who did. One of the things is that we offered it for free, right? We didn't charge for it. And that meant that we ended up using a system where we didn't always know who was watching. But we've really been committed through this whole year. We have not charged for anything that we've done this year. We felt that this is a service we just needed to be finding a way to provide. And I also want to say that our audiences and patrons have done such a great job of helping support us through this time that we felt that we needed to show the same kind of generosity in return. But absolutely, I think some folks got to know us who hadn't. One of the interesting questions for a lot of theaters moving forward is there anything from how we've been operating through this period that we can learn from and make use of moving forward, as opposed to just saying, boy, I can't wait till that's all behind us and I never have to think about that again. And I'm sure I'll feel that way about some of it. There's also this question of what can we take from it? What can we learn? What can we carry with us moving forward?
Exactly. Daniel, we're going to take a break to acknowledge the underwriters that make Artsbeat possible here on Westville Community Programming, Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB. While we do take that break, if you want to learn more about Chester Theater and what they are doing and working on, chestertheater.org. Peter Coles is our chief engineer this morning. I'm Mark Auerbach. This is Artsbeat, and we'll be right back.
Underwriting for WSKB's community radio programming is brought to you in part by R. Levesque Associates. They are offering landscape architecture, civil engineering, environmental permitting, and land surveying. RLA is a second-generation company devoted to excellence in the planning and design of outdoor spaces. On the web at rlaland.com or at 40 School Street in Westfield.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Bay State Dental. Comprehensive dentistry at 14 convenient locations in Springfield, Chicopee, Longmeadow, West Springfield, Belchertown, East Longmeadow, Ludlow, Northampton, Greenfield, and Wilbraham, as well as 29 Broad Street in Westfield. Bay State Dental makes it a priority to help you achieve and maintain the healthy smile you deserve. On the web at baystatedental.com.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday, every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Artsbeat, everyone. I'm Mark Auerbach, your host. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. We're chatting this morning with Daniel Elihu Kramer, who's the artistic director of the Chester Theater Company in Chester, who this summer will be presenting their three-play season at Hancock Shaker Village in the Berkshires, which certainly opens up a lot of restaurant opportunities and other things to do while you go see a show made possible by Chester. And Daniel, when do you think you'll be announcing your season? Daniel?
Here I am. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
I'm right here. My apologies.
I thought we lost you for a second. When do you think
Nope,
you'll be
I'm right
announcing your upcoming season?
We hope to be doing that next month. So we are working through both our own internal questions and processes about what we're going to do, figuring out a couple of rights questions, obviously. But we certainly hope at some point in February to be announcing our season. And, one of the things about this summer is you sort of feel like the ground's always shifting a little bit. So we will be announcing our season and at the same time sort of making our own plans in the back of our minds about, well, what if this happens? Then what would we shift, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, you said earlier that instead of 4 plays, you're only going to do 3. Will the 3 plays run longer this summer, or will it be kind of an abbreviated season from what you've done in previous years?
So each play will run the same 2-week run that we have done in the past. So in the past, we've had, 8 total weeks of performance in the summer. This week, there will only be 6 total. We will be spread out a little bit more across the summer. So interestingly enough, we'll actually be around, if you go from when our first performance is to when our last performance is in the summer, it's a broader stretch. So you'll be able to see us in June. You'll be able to see us in July. You'll be able to see us in August. One of the things that we wanted to do normally at Chester, we have a pretty crazy turnaround process, right, where we will close a show on a Sunday afternoon. And if you didn't leave, if you peeked in that theater, what actually is happening after everybody's gone is we're striking that show and loading the next show in before we go to bed Sunday night. That didn't feel like a way for us to be operating this summer, so we have a lot more breathing space between our productions so that we really can have a thoughtful and safe way to move forward through our season.
Now, you guys took over the town of Chester. I mean, since the day one of Chester Theater, you perform in a theater in their town hall, but you have a couple of houses on the main street nearby for administrative and all of that. Does this mean you're going to have to run a shuttle bus from Chester to Hancock back and forth for this because you have interns and expanded summer staff? Or are you going to move them all out to the Berkshires?
No, we're still going to be based in Chester for the summer. And that's where our offices are, and we'll be operating primarily out of there to the extent that we're housing people this summer. We expect that that'll be happening in Chester as well, though it's not yet clear. We will probably house a lot fewer folks than we normally do because that comes with its own health and safety questions. But we're really committed to the town of Chester. And, when we made this plan, it was a hard decision to make in part because we are so committed to the town and we wanted right away to make sure that everybody there understands that we'll be back. We have a lot of terrific partners there, including the folks who run Chester Common Table, who now opened a second restaurant, Carms. And it's really important to us that we are a part of that community. So we'll be keeping everything we're able to in Chester this summer. Which does mean, yes, we'll be sorting out how we do the 40-minute journey between Chester and Hancock Shaker Village on a regular basis.
Well, during the pandemic, I assume that your offices and all closed down and you worked remotely. Did anybody go check? Chester must be a ghost town well, first of all, because it's winter, but also with the pandemic this year, there weren't a lot of tourists or people wandering around there. Did you get to Chester on and off over the course of this period of time?
Absolutely. I've been out there pretty regularly through this period. I would say it's not a ghost town. I would say that it's certainly quieter, as everywhere is. But I've been pleased to see that folks are still looking out for each other there. Folks are still supporting CARMs. I've seen folks there a bunch. As long as they possibly could, they kept outdoor things going there and at the common table. But it's hard, right? Little communities and big communities have all suffered through this time. And, one of the things we're going to do this summer is we're going to try to keep rehearsing in the Town Hall Theater, even though we can't perform there. That lets us keep paying rent to the town, which we want to be able to do because we want to be supporting it there. But I'll also say it's a community that's, I think, done a great job of looking out for each other through this time.
Yeah, I mean, I found that I have done a couple of drives this past summer and fall into the Berkshires, and it's certainly quieter, but there is signs of life all over the place. And I, hope that towns like Chester that depend upon the summer theater traffic can make it, because there's all these other businesses that depend upon theater, like the restaurants, as you said, or maybe some of the shops, because you bring a lot of people into Chester every summer.
We do, and that's one of the reasons it was so hard to make this choice, but there just wasn't as clear a place for us to perform anywhere in Chester. One of the wonderful things about being out at Hancock is just that they have so much infrastructure in place, right? I don't have to worry about how are people going to go to the bathroom. That's all taken care of. They have a lovely cafe that has outdoor seating. And for us this summer, we needed to have that kind of structure. At the same time, we're so committed to making sure that we are back in Chester. And those communities, I think like every community, those communities are working day to day to figure out how do we move forward, how do we get through this, and how do we operate at the far end of this.
Daniel, we're out of time, believe it or not, so I hope that you'll come back during the spring once you've announced the season and we can chat again.
I would love to, Mark. Thank you as ever for having me on.
It's great to talk to you. Daniel Elihu Kramer from Chester Theater Company. If you're interested in what Chester's doing, stay in touch with them at chestertheater.org. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with the author Susanne Dunlap. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. I'm Mark Auerbach, and this is Artsbeat TV and Radio.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley, with convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut. Visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org.
Underwriting for WSKB's community radio programming is brought to you in part by R. Levesque Associates. They are offering landscape architecture, civil engineering, environmental permitting, and land surveying. RLA is a second-generation company devoted to excellence in the planning and design of outdoor spaces. On the web at rlaland.com or at 40 School Street in Westfield.
Support for community radio on WSKB provided by Westfield Electroplating. Employing over 140 skilled platers, painters, and technicians, Westfield Electroplating was founded in 1946 and was the first company in the country to achieve National Aerospace and Defense Contractor Program accreditation, proudly maintaining that status for over a decade. Westfield Electroplating provides over 50 quality finishes to meet your corrosion, cosmetic, or performance needs. On the web at www.westfieldplating.com or 413-568-3716. Westfield Electroplating, putting the finishing touches on technology.
Join us the third Wednesday of every month with Selectman Joe Didi and his take on everything Southwick.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Artsbeat, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. We're broadcasting on Westfield Community Programming Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB. If you've missed a part of today's program or you want to catch some of our previous programs, they're all archived on YouTube on WSKB Community Radio's page. Our next guest is the author Susanne Dunlap. And Susanne Dunlap has worn many different hats over her career. She is a musician. She studied music in school. She worked as an advertising copywriter and as a copywriter for other companies. She worked in development and public relations and marketing with two major arts organizations, the Hartford Ballet, Connecticut Opera, and she just juggles a whole bunch of things. But her books and her writing has really become something that many people have known her best for. And Susanne and I have not chatted in years. So, Susanne, it's great to have this opportunity to catch up.
It's lovely to hear your voice, Mark. It's been a long time, as you said.
It's been a long time, and usually when we get together, there's a cup of Starbucks, two
Yes.
Starbucks in between us, which we don't have this morning. But your writing career has so totally taken off over the last 10 or so years. Are you doing this full time? Or are you still dabbling in some of the other work that you did prior to writing?
Well, I am full-time involved in words and writing. Part of that full-time is involved with writing my own books. I write historical fiction, as you know. And the other part of that time is I'm now a certified book coach. And I work with clients and help them write their manuscripts or do their nonfiction book proposals.
So is a book coach like an editor, or is it a different type of role?
It's slightly different. You have to be an editor. You have to be able to do a lot of really good editing to be a book coach. But it's more than that. It's like a one-on-one relationship between you and the person you're working with, and you have calls. And I usually start with a series of exercises that were created by the program that I got my certification from, and it's really fabulous because you just see the light bulbs go off as you're talking to people and taking them through things, and it takes a sort of a more of a structural look at writing a book rather than just sitting down and putting words on a page. But that's important too.
Now, you write in the genre of what somebody said, historical fiction. When you're coaching people, are you coaching fiction and nonfiction writers, or are you sticking primarily with fiction?
I'm doing both, and it's really interesting. I love it because working with other writers helps my own writing as well. When you teach, you learn, and I'm working with writers who are doing everything from memoir to cozy mystery to nonfiction on brain injuries, things like that. So I'm a bit of a sponge. That was the one thing I really liked about working in advertising, actually, was just that you had to find out about a lot of different stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of your own writing, I know that you've written at least a quartet of books. How often are you writing a new one? And what drove you or inspired you to sit down and write a book?
Well, that's a two-part question. I actually have 10 published novels out now, and they're all historical. What inspired me was not being able to get a job as teaching music history at the college level. I had this PhD from Yale, and I was full of all this wonderful knowledge I just wanted to share, and the stories and everything. And my life situation didn't make it possible for me to actually get the kind of and level of job that I would have been able to get at that time. And so I took all of that and kind of channeled it into writing books. And I guess I was sort of a natural. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, your books are they're all set in the world of music and history and individuals that flow through them. What inspires you to pick these particular characters?
That's a really good question. It really can. My initial projects were actually inspired by the research and stuff I had done in my PhD that I just really thought was amazing. It was like the and I wrote this trilogy, which is the third volume, is coming out in I think June, about medieval women troubadours, which was something I had studied at Yale. I had started with my young adult fiction published by Bloomsbury. My first one was about, I created this Viennese violinist, a young girl, and I just really liked her character. Her godfather was Haydn and stuff like that. And but then I was pushed by my editor away from music and into different things. I did Anastasia in Russia. I did someone going with Florence Nightingale to the Crimea, and then a boarding school in post-revolutionary Paris. So when that kind of ended, that sort of series of books ended, and I was off on my own, I really wanted to just go back and revisit Teresa, my heroine from the first those, which I had written intending it to be a series. So now I've published 2 more in the series, and I have plans for a 4th at this point. And it's really a question of just liking the character and really seeing possibilities in her.
How many books can you be writing at the same time? Do you finish one and then move on to the next, or do you write more than one simultaneously?
Well, it's a lot of work to write a book, as I'm sure you know. And my life is kind of very occupied with other stuff too now with the book coaching. And sometimes I'm working on 2 if they're in different stages. Say I'm in the end stages of editing one, I might be drafting another. I can't simultaneously draft 2 different books. That just kind of doesn't work for me. Because you have to, especially with historical fiction, I think you have to dive in and really be in that setting in order to make it come alive. It's hard to switch from one setting to the other.
Now, you write a lot of historical fiction, so do you research the history? Do you actually go to the library and read up on things? Do you go to the sites where where the history took place? For example, you wrote of Anastasia. Did you go to Russia and soak in the culture, or did you read a lot of Russian literature and listen to music at the time as you begin to research and develop a story?
Well, Anastasia, really, I wish I could have gone to Russia. I have never been there. I've been all the other places my books are set. But that one, no. Oh, no, I haven't been to the Crimea. Sorry, that's a lie. But I do a lot of research. I read books. I tell you, big secret. You start at Wikipedia and you go down and look at the sources. And that gives you the books, the real books that you need in order to research something. So it's a little bit of a cheat, but it can be really helpful.
How long does it take you from the time you conceive of the idea of writing a book till the time it gets to the editing stage?
To the editing stage? Well, I would say drafting a book and putting it through a revision at least, and a book like the Teresa Sherman Mysteries is about a 6-month process. And then, things really is usually about a year from beginning to publication for me. And I know there are other writers who can write much more quickly. And then there are other writers who it takes them 10 years between books. but it's roughly a year for me.
Yeah, and this is a question that, as you know, you hear on social media, asking for a friend. Somebody asked me to ask, do you write longhand, sitting with yellow, legal pads? Do you type, word process it in? Do you dictate it into like with speak text or something like that? How do you work to get your book on paper?
I am a complete tech nerd. I use every tech tool that I can. And my current favorite is a program called Scrivener, which is, you type it in, but it has all sorts of other cool things, like you can import your research and that kind of thing. I could never write it longhand because I'd never be able to read my own writing. I wouldn't know what it was.
Yeah, at this point, after decades of writing, I can't keep my handwriting within the lines. It's just impossible.
It's really hard. No, and I was a pianist, so working at a keyboard feels very natural.
When you studied music and you got your doctorate in music at Yale, which is one of the finest schools in the country for music, did you expect to be a writer of music, or did you have any idea at that point that this is where you were going to go?
I had not even the vaguest idea. What I thought I was going to be writing academic papers and things like that. What I thought I was going to do would be to teach music history at a place like Smith or UMass or whatever. But the time that I got my PhD was the time at which all the humanities programs were kind of being decimated, and there just weren't jobs. Every job that was out there for music history had 120 applicants, all equally qualified pretty much. So I thought I was going to do that, and I couldn't, although I did have 1 year teaching music history at Columbia, which was fabulous. I loved it. I like to teach, which is one of the reasons the whole book coaching thing is so great, because it combines the writing and the teaching. And now I'm really focusing in on not just music, women in the arts. And I have another manuscript that's going to come out in the fall of 2022 with She Writes Press, called The Portraitist, which is about Adelaide Labiguière, a French sort of pre- and post-revolution woman painter. And that fascinates me too. It's just the role where women are in the world, in the arts, in their time.
Now, you've been, when you talk about women in the arts, you've been a woman in the arts. I mean, not only in literary arts and music, but you took quite a tour of duty as a public relations, development, and marketing person for major arts organizations as well. What led to that? How did that happen?
Well, the ballet was because my daughters were both ballet dancers. And they were at the School of the Hartford Ballet, and I started. I was a poor graduate student then, so I put them through that school by accompanying ballet classes, and then that kind of led to the other thing, because I had already had a career in advertising at that time, so I knew about marketing and stuff. So that's what led to that, and then the opera thing was kind of chance. I was working in New York, and a dear friend of mine said, "Hey, they're looking for a director, for a marketing director first at Connecticut Opera. Are you interested?" And so I thought, oh, I would like that. I would like to move back to Western Massachusetts, and even though it's a bad commute. So that's how that came about. Oh, and I loved it because also my PhD dissertation is in opera, so opera is a huge kind of love of mine.
And it's something we don't have around here. I mean, with Connecticut Opera folding and Commonwealth Opera folding, we don't really have a lot of live opera here anymore.
No. I had this wonderful little sort of confluence of things, though. One of the main characters, the most interesting character in my most recent young adult historical mystery with Teresa, I had her go to Paris in 1783, and while she's there, she interacts with and gets involved in the mystery with the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, who was a black violinist. And I had not come across him before. It was amazing doing the research. He's quite an incredible character. And like maybe a month after that book came out, LA Opera put on his only existing opera, L'Amant Anonyme or something like that. And it was streamed online, so I got a ticket, so I got to see it. So
when you talk about streaming online, I am so thankful that the Metropolitan Opera has put out all of its archives being streamed nightly for free. One can watch the Met and some of the ballet companies. I realized last year, Jacob's Pillow concentrates more in modern dance than it does in ballet. So to go see a big ballet, you really have to go to New York, either to New York City Ballet or ABT. And last year, a friend and I decided we were going to go see La Bayadere. And it was something that I always wanted to go. We had our tickets lined up and everything. And of course, the pandemic scrapped that. But I have... Seeing live opera here and live ballet is so difficult in Western Mass. So I miss it. And I just had to bring that up when you said streaming from LA, because we're so lucky to have so much of this material available to watch on TV.
Oh yeah, it's really, it's sort of a lifesaver in a way. It's really important. I feel so bad though. I mean, we have all these archival things, but the actual musicians and artists are struggling because the work has just dried up. And I know lots of people. Even I had just had a Zoom call with one of my oldest friends in London, Libby Walfish, and her husband Raphael is still performing ostensibly, but they're stuck there on lockdown, and he does some stuff online, but it's basically all his tours, everything that he was going to do over the year, all canceled.
Yeah, it's been a very difficult time. I mean, every week when I do Artsbeat since last March, talking to people and hearing the personal tragedies and struggles that so many musicians and dancers and actors and theater companies and orchestras are having. And yet out of all of this is coming a lot of triumph. People that are reinventing themselves, people that have turned to streaming and stuff like that. So it's kind of a dual-edged sword. As much as I miss, and I think everybody else does, live performance and frets for the industry and the people within it, there's some people doing some really cool stuff.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, in a bizarre way, I mean, in addition to doing my private book coaching, I also teach workshops with Writers in Progress, which is based in Florence. And they have this beautiful space where I was teaching before, and everybody's like chagrined that we can't use that space and have face-to-face workshops. However, with the workshops being online, we have people from across the country going to them, signing up for them. So you end up with a bigger kind of geographic spread as well. And, it's going to be interesting to see how we can somehow maintain that even when we get back to being in the studio.
Yeah. How much of your workday is spent actually sitting and writing versus doing the research or promoting your books?
Well, considering that most of my workday right now is spent with book coaching clients and book coaching stuff, I have probably about 20% of the day left to do all the writing and the promotion and everything. And frankly, I haven't done much promotion just lately because it's like, it's the holidays. It was, I can't do it. And so right now I'm concentrating, that time that I have, I'm concentrating on editing the third volume of my trilogy, which I have to get done by the end of this month. And I'm also working on a nonfiction book project, a book proposal, which I'm hoping will go somewhere, about women composers for young adults.
I know you work with a lot of different publishers, but do you have a compendium? Is there some place that if somebody wanted to learn about the collected works of Susanne Dunlap, do you have a website or someplace that somebody can go?
Yes, I do have a website, and it's my name with a hyphen, Susanne-Dunlap, and it's Susanne with an S and Dunlap with an A.com. And that's my author website. It has some blog posts and stuff about my books and all that kind of thing on it, although I'm overdue for a new blog post. I also have, again, that's another thing I've left for 6 weeks, I have a podcast about historical fiction, all based where I get interview authors and stuff, and it's called It's Just Historical. And it has been a real blast to talk to many really incredible authors, I have to say. Completely selfish.
And
completely,
where do people find the podcast? Wherever they go to get their podcasts?
Wherever you get your podcasts, absolutely. It's listed everywhere, I think. But certainly Apple and Overcast and what's the other one? Spotify.
And Spotify. Do you do them do you go into a studio to do this, or do you do it from home?
No, I do it at home. I have a good microphone. We do it over Zoom because it's really easy to record Zoom, and I edit it in a program called Descript, and it's fine. It's not, we're not talking great production values here, but that's not the point of the exercise.
No, the point is the conversation and,
yep.
And all of that. I mean, I've been, for the first time ever, have been working with a client to promote a podcast series, which is about game changers in medicine. And I found the entire thing about podcasts to be fascinating. And I was never much of a consumer of podcasts because when I was driving and I would turn on the radio, I was listening to news. And at home, I tend to listen to music. When unfortunately show tunes and furniture gets rearranged and stuff. But it's only been during the pandemic that I've even become aware of the variety of podcasts that are out there and available. It's fascinating.
It is, and I find I stumble on new ones all the time, and I listen while I'm exercising or walking. It's really. There's so much out there, and there's tons that I haven't even had time to listen to that I'm really interested in,
Yeah, I found that in I walk every day because the gyms are closed. And so I'm out there for a half an hour, a couple of times a day walking, and it's a great time to listen to podcasts.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And the nice thing about them, too, is they're generally sort of shortish. So it's not like, I love audiobooks, too. I always have at least one audiobook on the go. But the audiobook will take weeks because it's like 18 hours of listening, whereas the podcast, half an hour, sometimes a little longer, and you've got the whole thing.
I wish that podcasters would keep them short. Some that I've listened to are an hour and a half, and then that becomes
that's too long.
That becomes 3 walks, and I don't retain a lot of stuff, so I have to go back and hear the part that I missed to kind of get back in the mood. But the variety is so exciting. Have you turned some of your books into audiobooks?
One so far. The first volume of my trilogy is an audiobook. It's called Listen to the Wind. And I actually recorded on my own the voice for the Paris Affair as an audiobook. And just because I wanted to see whether I could do it. And I'm sort of in the middle of editing it, but it's the last thing I have time to do, so it's kind of been stalled for a while. So that will be interesting, just to go through the whole process and edit and do it so that it will be accepted by Audible and things like that. I'm a tech nerd. What can I say? I like to try and play with those things.
When you started out after you got your degree at Yale, and then you were wrapped up in advertising and marketing and development, did you ever think was it always on your radar to want to be a fiction writer, or did it come about? Is it something that now that you're concentrating in it that you had dreamed of, like when you were a kid or something like that, or did it come later in life?
Well, I started out as a kid wanting to write a mystery like Nancy Drew. That's when I was like 10. But I have a brother who is a very fine poet, and he was always kind of the writer in the family, and I was the musician in the family. And so I kind of just kept going in the music direction instead. And as I said, it wasn't until I realized I wasn't going to be able to teach music history at college level. And I had tried a few other things. I mean, I knew I was a good writer. I knew that I could do it. But writing a book is a whole other thing to just writing, because it's just holding all that stuff in your head and making it work and be structured in the right way, But I somehow managed to break in and have my first book published by an imprint of Simon & Schuster. So
I mean, that's like starting right at the top there.
Yeah, and I've only gone downhill from there.
So we're just about out of time. So Susanne, if people want to get go one stop to find all of your books, what is your website address?
It's Susanne, Susanne -Dunlap DUNLAP.com.
Okay, and can people find your podcasts there too?
I have a link to the podcast. In fact, I have a feed onto that as well, although the podcast does have its own website as well.
Terrific.
But, yeah.
So when does the next book come out?
I think June, beginning of June is going to be that one. And then after that, fall 2022.
So people can buy your books. They can start at your website, but can they also buy your books at independent booksellers or online and all of that?
Bookshop.com is a great place to buy actual physical copies because they support independent bookstores. Everything's on Amazon, of course, which whatever. But if you want obviously an ebook for your Kindle, you have to go to Amazon to get it.
Exactly.
But they're all available on ebook or paperback.
Well, Susanne, we're out of time. I hope at some point, as soon as the weather warms up, you and I can gather for an long overdue cup of coffee at Salon in Hadley, which is my go-to up in Hampshire County for coffee.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Terrific. We've been chatting with Susanne Dunlap, the author, today. This wraps up another edition of Artsbeat TV and Radio. If you missed a part of today's program, you can catch it on WSKB Community Radio's YouTube page, along with archived episodes of all of our Artsbeat. We'll be back again next Friday with another edition of Artsbeat. I'm Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles has been our chief engineer today. We're broadcasting from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy. You can hear us on 89.5 FM WSKB or Westfield Community Programming Channel 15. We'll see you next week, Friday, 8 o'clock.
Life is a funny thing. Sometimes you laugh and sing. Sometimes you grumble and you cuss. But either way, what do we care? We got us. We have our ups and downs, our share of smiles and frowns, but through it all we don't fuss. We got a special thing going, we got us. Why should the day-to-day worries that come our way give us a moment of doubt? When between you and me, even catastrophe couldn't break up what we've got together. So what if life's design gives us a minus sign? We got a mighty big plus. Something that always will be there. We got us. Birds of a feather, we laugh at whether it's shower or sunshine, we got us. Life is a puddle, you just gotta muddle through. We know it was ever thus, so we just huddle together. We got us. Some people like to go through their life sing-a-low. That wouldn't suit us at all. Why sing a melody as a soliloquy when it's more fun to be harmonizing? People may say we are crazy the way we are, that we won't even discuss. 'Cause what we got they can't smother. We trade our life for no other. They've only got one another, but we got us. People may say we are crazy the way we are, that we won't even discuss. 'Cause what we got they can't smother. We trade our life for